The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, also called HAMC, is an outlaw motorcycle club with its chapters spread around the globe. The members of this club typically ride Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Hells Angels are also incorporated as the Hells Angels Motorcycle Corporation in the US and Canada, having between 3,000 and 3,600 members. The HAMC is one of the largest motorcycle clubs in the world, with 467 chapters and at least 59 different countries, including Germany, Denmark, Turkey, Australia, Netherlands, Norway, and New Zealand. The club was founded by Otto Friedli back in 1948, and since then, it's become associated with criminal activities and incidents. Several police and intelligence agencies, including the United States Department of Justice and Europol, consider Hells Angels an organized crime syndicate, contend that members carry out widespread violent crimes. It is classified as one of the Big Four motorcycle gangs, along with pagans, outlaws, and banditos, by several U.S. law enforcement agencies. Members of this club have been involved in some horrific crimes, and over the last few decades, many of them have been convicted and sentenced to long prison terms. But what happens when these dangerous rebels face the ultimate punishment? What goes through their minds when they learn they'll never ride again, sentenced to spend the rest of their lives in prison? Their stories might just leave you speechless. Here are our top 5 Hells Angels members reacting to life in prison. Caius Vios. This first case is about the eccentric Caius Vios, who was involved in the murder of David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. He was charged with murder in the first degree, kidnapping, and witness intimidation. But Vios' alleged involvement in the act was not the only occurrence that drew attention to him. Caius Vios had implants in his forehead that looked like horns, green bones tattooed on his fingers, and the number 666 etched above his eyebrows. He was a self-proclaimed vampire and Satanist and made sure both his body and name looked the part. Vios legally changed his name in 2008 from Roy Gutfinski Jr. to Caius Vios. Caius is a vampire in the Twilight series, and Vios is a Roman god often thought to be escaping from hell. He had previously had a stint with the law that honestly gives him the name Psycho to say the least. In 1999, Vios and his girlfriend Deanne Jones made the news for allegedly assaulting a 16-year-old girl. According to prosecutors, they lured the girl to their motel room where Jones cut open the girl's back with a razor blade. The couple then kissed each other and licked the girl's blood. The girl needed over 30 stitches in her 7-inch wound, and police were notified after she arrived at the hospital. At the trial, Vios identified himself as a Satan worshiper and vampire who craved both his own and others' blood. They were found guilty of elevated aggravated assault and reckless conduct. In 2000, Vios received a 10-year prison sentence, with 3 years of his sentence served before being released. All of this was before he even became a Hells Angel. Fast forward years later, and Vios is back in court with another stomach-turning murder. According to prosecutors, Vios helped 2 other men kidnap and shoot the victims to death. And the 2 other men were murdered to eliminate witnesses to one of the killings. Glasser, one of the victims, was set to testify against a Hells Angels member in an assault case. Here's the opening statement by his lawyer.
The Commonwealth has never been able to find the scene of these killings, and therefore I expect there will be no evidence or testimony connecting Mr. Vios to the location or locations where these crimes occurred.
The prosecutor argued that Vios had a reason to help Hall, who was a high-ranking member of the Hells Angels.
This case that the Commonwealth will present is not about just what the defendant, Caius Vios, did, but what did the three of them do?
However, throughout the trial, Vios maintained his innocence and refused to talk to the police or accept any plea deals. Vios also talks about how the DA offered him a deal which he refused and wouldn't be accepting any plea deals.
When I was first arrested, the police made it clear to me that they did not actually believe I had anything to do with the disappearance and the murder of these men, but that they did believe I possessed some knowledge that would greatly assist in their investigation.
Very strong words from Caius Vios, but it wasn't enough to sway the jury, because they found him guilty of 3 counts of murder, kidnapping, and intimidation of a witness. One by one, all the verdicts were read, leading to Vios serving 3 life sentences without parole. Vios didn't take the sentencing lightly and had a very public outburst.
Yeah, I'll see you all in hell, Louis, remember that. Every one of you, I'll see you in hell.
Joseph Lancia. About 4 years ago, Joseph Lancia ascended to the top position of the Rhode Island chapter of the Hells Angel biker gang. Placed in handcuffs, he was led from a Providence Superior courtroom to begin serving a 5-year prison sentence. Lancia, 30 of Smithfield, pleaded no contest to the charge of felony assault and battery, as well as carrying a gun without a license. The more serious charges of discharging a firearm when committing a crime of violence and assault with intent to commit murder were dismissed as part of the deal. Judge Kristen Rogers asked Lancia if he had anything to say before making the punishment official. Nothing, he replied. Lancia will be placed on 10 years of probation when he gets out of the Adult Correctional Institution in Cranston. The main case against Lancia stems from a June 2019 incident when police said he fired a gun at a truck driven by Richard Starnino, once a prospect to join the biker club who was involved in an ongoing dispute with Lancia. Investigators said video surveillance shows Lancia shooting at the truck as Starnino was driving by the Hells Angels Providence headquarters on Messer Street. The video, which was the main evidence against Lancia, was from the clubhouse's own security system. The investigation into the shooting led to a dramatic daytime raid by the Rhode Island State Police. Dozens of full-patch members of the Hells Angels were in the courtroom for the sentencing. As Lancia's wrists were being placed in handcuffs, he nodded to a fellow member and gave the group a smile. A sheriff then led him through a door to be ferried off to the ACI. Number 3. Jonathan Nelson, Russell Taylor Ott, Brian Wayne Went. Nelson, also known as John of St. Rosa. Russell Taylor Ott, nicknamed Rusty, also from Santa Rosa, and Brian Wayne Went of Tulare are members of the Sonoma County Hells Angels Club who were convicted for taking the life of one of their own members and for having taken part in conspiracy to take a life. According to the Department of Justice, the Sonoma County Hells Angels Club formed in 1962 and generates most of its income through the sales of shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and other swag bearing the club's logo. They have also sponsored several toy drives for children. The 3 members of the Sonoma County chapter were convicted in federal court for taking someone's life in aid of racketeering. After an 8-year-long investigation in the Sonoma Club of the Department of Justice, the Santa Rosa Police Department, and the California Highway Patrol, 11 members of the Hells Angels were indicted in 2017 for conspiracy involving death, dealing narcotics, assault, robbery, extortion, illegal firearm possession, and obstruction of justice. Nelson, Ott, and Went were also arrested in the sweep. They were found guilty of taking the life of Joel Silva, a member who they determined had been creating problems for the club, according to reports. The federal prosecutors revealed that Nelson arranged for Silva's death with Ott. The deed went down in Fresno on July 15, 2014, when Ott drove Silva there on the pretense of his needing to fight with the Fresno chapter's president, Went, in order to resolve his problems with the club. When they arrived, Went shot Silva in the head. The next day, his body was incinerated at a local crematorium. The trial also revealed many new things about the Sonoma Hells Angels Club. According to witnesses, there was a pattern of threatening anyone who approached the authorities regarding the motorcycles gang's activities. All three men were facing mandatory life sentences in prison. They were remanded to federal custody pending sentencing. Christian Ruffino, a notorious name within the Hells Angel Motorcycle Club from Brewster. His dark past caught up with him once again when the vigilant Cranston police apprehended him. He was arrested by Cranston police as a felon carrying a firearm. Ruffino, who was 42 back then, pleaded guilty to one count of being a felon in possession of a firearm in August 2011. Stemming from a December 2009 traffic stop by a Cranston police officer who realized that Ruffino was high. When he searched Ruffino's vehicle, he discovered a loaded handgun, ammunition, and a small bag containing an illegal substance in his car. But that wasn't Ruffino's debut in the world of crime. In 1995, he was slapped with a conviction for assault and battery using a dangerous weapon. Fast forward to 1998, he escalated to armed robbery with a chilling intent to take a life in New Bedford. And who could forget his audacious bank heist in Maine back in 1990, executed with raw force, violence, and intimidation. Thanks to the tenacity of the Cranston police and the special agents from the FBI's elite Safe Streets Task Force, Ruffino's case was meticulously dissected, as stated by the Justice Department. During the sentencing hearing, U.S. District Court Judge John J. McConnell sentenced Ruffino as an armed career criminal. Prosecutors said he admitted to being a member of the New York chapter of the Hells Angels. Ruffino was sentenced to 15 years in prison for violating a law barring felons from carrying firearms. Prosecutors also revealed that Ruffino had initially been stopped for over-speeding on Route 95 because of his blatant disregard for the rules. Ruffino ended up in jail once again, and this time for a much longer time. Maurice Boucher. Maurice Boucher was a Canadian gangster, convicted criminal, reputed narcotics trafficker, and outlaw biker. He was once the president of the Hells Angels Quebec Nomads chapter. Boucher was one of the lead Montreal's Hells Angels against a rival Rock Machine biker gang during the infamous Quebec Biker War that lasted between 1994 and 2002 in Quebec, Canada. Back in September 1984, Boucher held a weapon to the head of a 16-year-old girl and assaulted her that eventually led to a conviction. During his time in prison, Boucher somehow illegally collected employment insurance, and after being released in January 1986, he joined the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in Montreal. He rose through the ranks pretty quickly. He became a full patch member of the Hells Angels just 3 days after Martin Hunault, the leader of an outlaw biker gang called the Death Riders, died. It's widely believed that Boucher was the one who took his life. According to Canadian crime journalist Jerry Langton, Boucher was big, strong, and not afraid to fight anyone. And smart, charismatic, even charming, and could get along with just about anyone. Back in 2002, during the intense war between Hells Angels and the Rock Machine, Boucher was convicted for ordering the deaths of 2 Quebec prison officers in an attempt to destabilize the Quebec justice system. The officers were Diane Levine and Pierre Rondeau. Both of them were chosen at random. Boucher wanted the bikers to commit crimes so terrible the prosecutors would not want to make deals to turn any bikers into informants. During Boucher's trial, the Crown attorney prosecuting him regularly received death threats. The key witness was Stephen Gagny, who was involved in both the deaths. He testified that Boucher ordered him to carry out the assaults and then congratulated him after he did it. It took the jury around 11 days to deliberate, after which they found him guilty. Boucher displayed no emotion as the verdict was announced, besides for a slight pursing of his lips. He was sentenced to 3 life sentences at Canada's only maximum security prison, St. Anne des Plaines. Boucher survived several assassination attempts while he was imprisoned there. He passed away in the Archambault Institution in July 2022 while receiving palliative care following the metastasis of his throat cancer.